Well, what a wonderful vision. I think this picture of the mind able to look at itself and manage itself is just fantastic, and also the action that it leads to, just wonderful. Now, we have some questions, and then we're going to end with the meditation.
Okay.
Okay. Who wants to start the questions? Oh, we've got two mics. Here.
Hi. I'm just wondering, if you have these wonderful techniques for coping with negativity, isn't there a danger that you don't change that negativity?
You don't change them, you mean?
You don't change the negativity, and you end up tolerating the intolerable.
Oh yes, of course. Well, if you are keeping things like a time bomb, somehow they will manifest themselves. And so if you're just... the difference between freeing a thought of anger and suppressing a thought of anger is huge. There are two extremes. You suppress it momentarily, of course, putting it in a dark corner of the mind somewhere, or you blow the fuse. Both are highly, I think, dysfunctional. But the idea of an intelligent way of dealing with emotions, for instance, I mentioned the idea of increasing the space of mindfulness. You look at anxiety, you look at anger, and you're not repressing it at all. You are just, the gaze of mindfulness made that anger that looks so impressive and threatening, like this, in India, this monsoon clouds, you almost feel you could go and sit on it. But what does it mean to gaze at it with mindfulness? You go in the cloud, thought you could sit on it, it's just mist. So if you go in the thought, what it is, that thought of anger? It doesn't have an army like a general, it's not crushing you like a stone, it's not burning like a fire, it may make a knot in your chest, but if you look, it has no color, location, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth. It's a bunch of thoughts. Now, if you can, by this mindful sort of watching, that it just melts away like the morning frost under the rising sun. Actually, what you have done is this. You didn't repress it. You didn't maybe end your tendencies, but you certainly dealt successfully with that episode. So that anger has dissolved, that particular one. It's not repressed, it's not blown away. So then if you do that once, twice, many times, what happens is not only that you repeatedly did successfully with those arisings, but the very tendency for those to come strongly will also come down. That means your threshold will be higher. It will take much more to make you angry, less often. And at some point, that's what the spiritual path claims, but it seems from first-hand experience, I've been living for 40 years with great practitioners, and really you don't feel that they're repressing anything. There's some moment where the possibility of hatred is just gone. There's no way you could consciously harm someone. This is it's no more your nature. So the tendencies have disappeared. So that's a success. We know because how those traits have been formed. One emotion after one another. One thought of anger or frustrations or resentment comes, and another one. And those don't last long. They last few seconds. But then the accumulation of it creates moods that last for hours. You're crossed, you're upset, you're sad, you're depressed. And then the accumulation of moods create traits. Of course, they are based on genetic predisposition, but to a great extent, if the environment, what you experienced when you were young, the level of affection that you got anyway, accumulation made some folds, some kind of, like a past me that has been rolled for a long time. If you put it flat, it rolls again. But if you patiently, again, intelligently deal with every emotion as it arises, with time, the successful dealing will change your mood, will change your traits, and the past me will no more roll again. So tendency will have been eroded. So that's the Buddhist idea. It seems it works. Neuroscience seems to confirm that it seems to be working. Certainly on the personal first-person experience, it seems it certainly works. And then I remember very well one of my teachers speaking about Westerners who have done a lot of retreats, that 3 years retreat, once, twice, sometime. He said, I don't know how enlightened they are, but I have one confidence that those people now, they will never harm someone willingly. Well, that's quite something already. So it's a matter to try, but personally, over many years, I truly have confidence that it does work to change our deep tendencies as well, not just how we deal with momentary emotions.
Who's next? Don't be shy. Yes. Here's the mic.
But just a last word.
Sorry.
There's a big difference between dealing with circumstances, even unpleasant they are, and not being swayed by those, and resignation. The strength of being able to deal with the ups and downs is not the same as accepting it for granted. I mean, you at least have the capacity to deal with them, and then you start the process of change. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, you touched on this, how in some sense GDP as a target can actually be antagonistic to what you're telling us about mindfulness as a way to well-being. I'm very interested in that because I see our society as being more and more led by neoliberal economics, and they're stating there is no alternative. And as a consequence, I mean, one aspect of that is we're getting very marketing, advertising saturated societies, which are kind of stirring you away from that mindful approach to life all the time. So I just wondered what your thoughts were on that and how that can be sort of challenged in our societies.
Thank you.
So Richard is more the specialist, but
No.
I didn't mean that GDP has only negative effect. Of course not. I mean, economic growth has brought a lot of well-beings taken. Even in China, it has taken more people out of poverty than anyone in the 20th century. But initially, the technological revolution, the scientific revolution was meant to improve people's quality of life. The longevity has increased dramatically, and so forth, many advantages. But if it's only that, then now at this stage, there's clearly not only positive effects. And we can see the best example, an obvious example, is the environment, and also the speed of frantic lives and so forth. So those aspects needs to be dealt with, and we cannot expect that everything will be fine if the economic growth continue, because we need to keep in mind what constitute for themselves the criteria of well-being, and for themselves the criteria of environment. So obviously you can have a terrific success in growth, even comfort in life, enjoying surfing the wave of comfort, material comfort, and increasing your consumption and so forth, has very strong negative impact on 100 years down. So that's why we need to take the mid-term and the long-term in consideration. And that's where, there's a lot of studies that in the end, like if you think of Tim Kasser's study on the level of consumerism and extrinsic values and materialistic values, he studied 20,000 people over 20 years. And the people who are highest on the consumption sort of tendency with questionnaires and other evaluations, it turns out that they are looking for hedonistic pleasures and quite not succeeding well in being happy. They have a lot of acquaintances, but very few real friends. Even their health is poorer. They are sometimes very pessimistic and obsessed with debt. All kinds of things that they don't have global views, like they don't care too much about the environment and things like that. So his conclusion is, I'm not a moralist. I'm not telling you what people should do, but if your goal is to somehow be happy in a more lasting way, to have a lot of good friends, to be healthy, and then, have some kind of positive outlook with intrinsic values, But don't expect that to come from high consumerism. That's the fact of what the science has shown. So that he advocates for a voluntary simplicity, not as a kind of, ascetic practice, but just it might fulfill better our aspiration for those values.
Next.
Isn't one of the main challenges to society labeling, how we can all easily label others because they're inferior or they're superior? Once you do away with labels, actually, if you move away with labels and if you just observe labels, then there isn't so much of a problem. This is what more people need to do.
I didn't get the question itself.
I don't know if this is relevant. It's just
inevitably putting people in hierarchies, or can we get away from putting people in hierarchies and just observe each other?
I mean, I don't know, I'm not sure what you exactly mean, but if you mean like in-group, out-groups and things like that.
Well, I'm autistic, for instance, so most of my life I've had a label placed on me that I don't recognize empathy, I don't recognize love, and things like that. So it puts me in a difficult situation. There are plenty of other people in the world who are similar to me.
Oh, I see. Well, I think, hard to say, but let me put my Buddhist hat for a while. The Buddhist approach is to recognize the incredible variety of dispositions, aspirations, and to provide means so that everyone can somehow, achieve a more optimal way of being, starting from wherever we start. So we say, it's a symbolic image, 84,000 gateways to the spiritual path, because some will start with different inclination, different sort of traits. But there's still possibility for everyone has a potential for achieving a more optimal way of being. So that not the same way for everyone, but somehow something can be cultivated. So in that sense, there cannot be discriminations. Some will start with more anger, some with more apathy, some will start with craving, some will have more problem with jealousy, some will just dull and they don't care for anything. So all that are mental conditions, and there could be ways, skillful ways to deal with those so that we feel more a sense of accomplishment and flourishing.
Matthieu, we could go on forever, I think, but time is passing, and I think many of us would like to have a little meditation with you. So why don't we end with that?
Maybe maybe Lord Layard won, but maybe you just want to go home and have supper or something. That's a good alternative. Anyway, don't feel any problem if you want to skip that meditation, but we'll do it very short.